I'm Melissa Simmonds. I'm also known as Miss Talk. So this is my session. I'm always incredibly nervous when I do things like this. I think one of the benefits of the pandemic and Zoom is you can have your pajama bottoms on. That always helps me to feel more comfortable. So I look decent here, but down there, you know, pajamas and slippers. So just bear with me is what I'm saying. Okay, so I'm going to now attempt to do the share screen. Right, so here's the session. So as I said, my name's Miss Talk, and this session is called Black History Month for Dummies and White Teachers. And I know that the title's quite controversial for some people, but that's how it goes. So let me attempt to, okay. So who am I? First and foremost, I consider myself to be a parent. So I'm parent to 2 children who are now in Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4, and we are Sheffield based. My heritage is Jamaican, so both my mother and father are both from Jamaica and migrated to this country as small children. I'm not sure how old my father was, but my mother was 8 years old. So she was a tiny little girl who came to England with her brother, who at the time, actually my brother was 8, my mum's brother was 8, my mum was 6, and then my auntie was 4. And my grandma was over in the UK already, because my granddad was over here and he sent for my grandma, because this is how the process was. So my granddad sent for my nanan, and then my nanan came over and got settled, and then sent for her 3 children, and they came over on the plane and had a air steward kind of just watch over them, which is again very, very common. Migration was very common in the 50s and 60s within the UK. So I consider myself to be Black British. Previously, I think we were called Afro-Caribbean. I now use the term Black. I absolutely hate BAME. And I think the majority of people who you put under the BAME umbrella actually hates the terminology BAME, because it doesn't actually define anything. We are so individual. We're individual as communities, and we're all kind of put together. So I'm Black British, and my grandma, my actual great grandparents were over here first. So I'm 5th generation of Black British, I guess you'd call us now. I'm autistic. I got my diagnosis 4 years ago, which kind of turned my life upside down in a positive way. And so I'm now unpicking everything and just kind of learning about myself. So that is something that I'm really interested in. I'm currently a student. I'm doing a master's in autism studies. I should have finished it by now, but the pandemic happened and my focus was my children. I'm a trustee at the Sheffield Parent Carer Forum. I'm part of something called the Autism Partnership Board. I've just actually got my first graduate post. I'm now a project manager at VAS, and that's for adult autism. On Twitter, you can find me under Miss Taught, so at Miss_Taught, and I'm also on Instagram. And I created Miss Taught because a little boy in my daughter's class kept telling people that autism was a disease, which obviously she found incredibly upsetting. And I realized actually children need to be educated, because if they're educated about autism, then the wider community is. So the reason I put this slide in is to show you that I'm a really busy person. And actually I had no desire whatsoever to go down this path of Black History Month training. I really saw that as something that the kids learn at school. Obviously, as parents, we educate them about what we know, but this was something I wasn't taking responsibility for at home, put it that way. So I really didn't want to do this and continue to not want to do this, but I see the need. It's vital that it's done. Right, so let's look at the definition of history. So history is defined as the study of past events, particularly in human affairs, the past considered as a whole, the whole series as past events connected with a particular person or thing, a past characterized by a particular thing, a continuous, typically chronological record or import of public events or a particular trend or institution. Would you just go outside, sweetheart, so Mummy can finish doing what she's doing? This is one of the other things with pandemic. Your child randomly walks in even though you've asked them not to. Sorry? Right. So this bit is where I want people to contribute. I'm going to ask you a question and I want you to, if you feel comfortable, just as Joe mentioned, you know, just type who and why, basically. So here's the question, and I know it's a long question, but bear with me. Okay, let me try and get my screen out of the way so I can see what I'm reading. Oh, let's go back. Okay, so you are white. Your parents and grandparents migrated to Jamaica from England in the 1950s. So you are the first generation of your family born in the UK. White English people like yourselves are in its sixth generation of being a minority in Jamaica, and there's around 300,000 people like you living there. In total, over 66 million people live in Jamaica. Although you are the minority, you live in a place called Lucy, and Lucy is a real place, by the way. There is a large white English population in it, but you are still the minority. All the teachers in the schools your kids attend are Black and Jamaican. There is a White History Month. It began as a way of remembering important people and events in the history of the UK diaspora. It's an opportunity for the white children to learn about their history and heritage. It's an opportunity for the Black children to learn that there is more to their white peers than stereotypes, that the whites in England and the UK have contributed to society. So basically, I'm asking you to flip your experience, and I'm wanting you to be a white minority as opposed to the Black minority. And you're in a predominantly Black country, Jamaica, and you are in the white minority. And even though you're in a place where there is a lot of white people, you are still the minority in that country. And, you know, you're underrepresented in positions of power and positions of responsibility, in managerial positions. And, you know, for a month a year, you're taught about White History Month. So I want to know basically who you would choose. Who would you like your kids to come home from school and tell you they are learning about for White History Month, and why? So that's my question. And I've done this before, and people have said people like, quite a few people actually mentioned Margaret Thatcher, Queen Elizabeth I. They've mentioned Winston Churchill. There's been lots of people like that who has popped up as names that they would want to teach their kids about if Black History Month was only taught for a month at school. And really, it is only a week. It is only a week at school that they're taught it. So who would you want your children to learn about in White History Month, and why? Has anybody written anything, Joe?
Yep, so Alex Furness has replied by saying the suffragettes as a start.
Okay.
And someone followed that up with Emily Pankhurst as well.
Okay.
Florence Nightingale, Ada Lovelace, Shakespeare.
Okay. Ada Lovelace, I actually know about her because me and my daughter, we read a book at night called Her Story, and it's 50 influential women. So we read about her and we found her incredibly fascinating. So yeah, I understand why she was mentioned. And all the other names, I've heard those names before. I've also heard one person mentioned, I don't know how to pronounce his first name, but his surname's Bevan. He was the person who kind of helped to create the NHS. So that was another person that people mentioned. Are there any other responses?
Yeah, we've had Leonardo da Vinci and Leonardo DiCaprio.
Okay.
Featuring well. A few people saying it's Aneurin Bevan, pronounced Aneurin Bevan, yes. Mel has said Eminem.
Okay.
And Christine has said Annie Lennox for her pioneering work with women's rights, her musical talents and autonomous creativity, and her work to promote healthcare for women with HIV in Africa.
Okay. I find it fascinating that somebody's mentioned Eminem and somebody's mentioned Leonardo DiCaprio. And I guess I would ask them to think about if they're from the UK, you've migrated from the UK to Jamaica and you learn about one person a year. Would you want to be learning about an American individual, a white American individual, or would you want it to be somebody from the UK or Europe even? So I find those responses fascinating. Anyone else?
Yes, a few more. So it's probably quite interesting. Claire T has said Hitler as a warning. Dave Berry has said working people and day-to-day life. And Udit has said Thomas Clarkson. And Leona has said Freddie Mercury.
Okay, cool. So I'll go on to the next slide. But, people keep putting your responses in about who you would want your children to learn about for that 1 week a year. Right, so this is a letter that I sent to my kids' school, and I've made sure it's anonymous. I've taken names and things like that out. So see attached. As I mentioned last week, Margaret is a woman who her child's in the same class as my child, and she's somebody who I consider to be a white ally. And I don't know if people have heard of white allies, but it's a person who understands that even though they may have started from humble beginnings, even though they may not have a lot of money or a lot of power in their positions, they understand that they're actually still in a position of privilege, and so help to facilitate and uplift people from other nationalities. And Margaret is definitely one of those people in my life. So as I mentioned last week, Margaret and I feel that Black heritage can successfully be woven through the school curriculum without adding too much additional work onto the teachers' TA plates. I've created a grid of things that could be done this term. Admittedly, I don't know how far in advance teachers plan their lessons, so I can appreciate that not all of this can be possible this term. But I cannot explain how important it is for the Black children to learn that they belong in this country and that people who looked like them have, I've said mad, but made positive impacts and strides in making the UK what it is today. And whilst the likes of Nelson Mandela and Rosa Parks are important, we are missing out on the opportunity of teaching the entire community that there are amazing Black British individuals too. I'm happy to discuss and help you in any way I can. P.S. The grid is rough and I'm not the best speller, so excuse any mistakes I might have made. And that advocating thing at the bottom, that's just my tagline in my email address. So that's what I wrote to the head of the school that our children attend. And then my white ally, Margaret, also, we kind of tried to work as a tag team. So she also emailed the school as well and said, thanks, Melissa, for pulling together the Black History Month website info and suggestions for school and opportunities to focus on people who the children might not have heard of before we have made important contributions to our world. So there you go. Happy to have a chat about this. Melissa and I were both inspired by listening to David Olusoga's talk about the depth reach of Black British history. He recently published a book and has a series on the BBC. We realised how little we knew. A few small changes, mindset shifts could really help our children's understanding and appreciation. So it wasn't just me kind of as the Black parent going in there and saying, we need to learn about Black British individuals. We also had a white ally who kind of tag teamed with me and went in and said, yeah, we're both inspired by this. We both realised that there's things we've not learned and things that we don't know. And there's opportunities. So, Margaret really supported me with that. So we sent that in, okay? So next slide. So this is the grid, and I've added to the grid, but this was the grid that I sent to the school. And I basically went online on the school website, and they put up grids every term about what the children will be learning. And so I just basically took the themes that they were doing for each year group and thought of a way to weave in some Black information. So it's not that I'm wanting somebody to stand up at the beginning of class and say, gather round children, we're going to learn about Black people. I just want things to be woven within the curriculum, so it's very natural to the children to be learning about us always being here. One of the things I particularly liked was the Goldilocks and the Three Bears, because foundation year is obviously the first year of those kids being in school, and for a lot of the parents, it's the first time that they're interacting in school with so many other parents. So it would help the parents feel part of the community if they were going in and cooking things from their different cultures. Superheroes, I'm a big superhero fan, and there are lots of Black superheroes. And so, especially at the minute, there's a Kamala Khan. She's the first Muslim superhero. And so I just thought it would be nice for the children to see things other than Spider-Man. And actually, when I did this was prior to Spider-Man and the multiverse. So it was before we had our first Black Spider-Man. So you can see here, I've just tried to kind of inspire the teachers to search a bit further, all the TAs, and to find things that they can kind of contribute to our children's education. So this was done in 2017, this one was done. So this is one of the people that the kids learnt about in Black History Month in 2017. So Beyonce Giselle Knowles Carter, she was born on September the 4th in 1981. She's an American singer, songwriter, actress, director, record producer, and dancer. She's born and raised in Houston, Texas. Beyonce performed in various singing and dancing competitions as a child. She rose to fame in the late 1990s as lead singer of the R&B girl group Destiny's Child. And, I don't know anybody who doesn't love Beyonce. She's inspirational. For her to be able to dance in heels and not be out of breath and sing on point, I give her all the praises. But my question to you all is, should our children be learning about Beyonce in Black History Month? Now, some would argue that you know, as a woman, she has done a lot. You know, she's worth hundreds of millions of pounds. She's contributed so much. She's, you know, a mother, a singer, songwriter, a dancer. She's amazing. But should we be learning about her in Black History Month? So I thought what I'd do is the question I asked you previously, I thought I would flip the narrative and show you what I mean. So, White History Month. Taylor Swift would be the Beyonce equivalent. So, Taylor Allison Swift, born December 13th, 1989, is an American singer-songwriter. As one of the world's leading contemporary recording artists, she is known for narrative songs about her personal life, which have received widespread media coverage. Born and raised in Pennsylvania, Swift moved to Nashville, Tennessee at the age of 14 to pursue a career in country music. Her 2006 self-titled debut album peaked at number 5 on the Billboard. The album's third single, Our Song, made her the youngest person to single-handedly write and perform a number 1 song on the Hot Country Songs chart. So I'd like to know what you all feel about your child coming home and telling you, Mum, we're learning about Taylor Swift for White History Month. How would you all feel about that? So if you could just read out some of the things that people have been saying, Joe, I'd appreciate that.
Yep, so just had our first comment come in from Julie C, which is bewildered, exclamation mark. So yeah, and Claire T has said, my eyes would definitely roll. And Hannah has said, not historical and not particularly inspiring in terms of what my children might want to be or do when older. Rachel has said she feels very let down. And yeah, Leona has said, I think she has done well, but not overly impressed. And Emily says, Beyonce is a billionaire. But yes, but not historical.
Yeah.
And sorry, there's one more. And then Rosie says, it's a tricky one. In one way, people might be able to get more excited, engaged about pop culture than someone in history. But realistically, as a parent, imagine it's not giving them good aspirational figures to look to. And Christina says, it just shows that no one person can represent a race.
Cool. So that was 2017. So I thought to myself, okay, they've not kind of done what Margaret and I suggested. And obviously I put a lot of time into creating the grid, but I understand, you know, they're probably busy. So I thought, well, you know, I'm suggesting to them to kind of weave it into the curriculum. So I thought, well, why don't I try to have the school focus on one individual or one event? I thought maybe that would be better, and have them just think about it for actual Black History Month. Maybe that will help. So in 2018, Margaret knew how determined I was in 2018. And I set to work very early in the year, putting some things together, because I thought, you know, what I probably need to do is kind of get to them earlier, communicate with them, and then kind of help to support them in adding these things to the curriculum. And I thought it'd also be a good idea if maybe they had a theme, because you know, schools younger, like Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, they love to be able to make things, they love to be able to show things in assembly. So I thought maybe I should think about Black individuals from the UK who have done things that, you know, we can celebrate. So I went back to the drawing board. So this was 2018, and Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Again, I thought, all right, the porridge thing, to me, the porridge thing is kind of a no-brainer. You're teaching the kids stuff, the parents are engaging, you can probably get some parents to volunteer after that because they're feeling part of the school community. So I stuck with that. Now, Claudia Jones is someone who's incredibly inspiring, and she's done so much. You know, first she created the first Black weekly newspaper. She was also one of the people she was the main person behind the Notting Hill Carnival. And the Notting Hill Carnival started because of violence happening in the community. Somebody was killed and it was a racist attack. And she tried to bring the community together and created the Notting Hill Carnival. And who doesn't know about the Notting Hill Carnival? And I thought, actually, the kids will be able to create something like, you know, newspaper articles or make wonderful, bright costumes. And it can be something that Key Stage 1 kind of work on together. So I thought that might help, because then when you're prepping stuff, you know, just prep extra. You're not having to do too many different things. So I thought, actually, let Key Stage 1 learn about Claudia Jones. So they're learning about an individual. And then, you know, ancient Egypt, again, is something that they learn about every year. But I think me growing up, my grandma was a massive movie fan. So even when you see people like Cleopatra, that was Elizabeth Taylor. When you watch the biblical movies, it was always white actors. Even recent movies about Egypt, it was predominantly white actors. So I thought, actually, it's really important that they start to look at the people from Egypt. I've been to Egypt a couple of years ago, and it was amazing how some people looked just like me, and some people had more of an Asian appearance, be it Middle Eastern. But it was wonderful to know, to go there and just feel a part of the community. So I thought, actually, let them start to look at pictures, let them start to realize that there is more to Black history than American Black history. That was my thinking behind ancient Egypt, the Romans, you know, that beachy head woman. She was obviously in the news a couple of years ago when they said, actually, they think it was a Black woman. There's some amazing websites you can go on that, you know, via the BBC or like children's websites, reputable websites, where you can learn about Roman history, and you can realize that Romans kind of, you know, they had armies from all around the world. So there was Black soldiers in the Roman Empire. So I thought that would help them. And then year 5, as they're getting older, you know, they're learning to be more critical thinkers and understand things more clearly. It was 70 years of the NHS. So I thought, well, that's wonderful, because obviously you had the Windrush and the NHS, they coincide. They're both 70 years old. And, you know, let them understand that there is more to us than slavery. You know, we were here prior to slavery, we're here after slavery. And actually, we as Black individuals, we played a big part in helping to build the NHS. So I thought that, you know, this would be a better plan for the school. And so I sent this to the school. And again, I always let them know that I'm there to help. I'm there to support them any way that I can. I know it's something that my white ally Margaret is more than willing to do as well at the school. So let's see what they did for Black History Month in 2018. Oh, actually, my daughter's class, I even took in information. So I took in articles because she at the time was a year 5. So I took articles in that would kind of help as well, so that he could see the teacher could see examples of what I was suggesting that they do. So as a parent, even though you could see on my first slide how busy I am, my children's education is really important to me. And so I was more than willing to go in and help to contribute in helping all the children with their education. So let's see who they learn about. And as I'm showing you the pictures, I want your thoughts on the people that I'm showing you. So one of the classes learned about Drake, because he brought a song out, you know, the song where you get out of the car and you do the dance. He brought that song out that year, and so they played that song in the class and learnt the dance. That was year 6. So year 6, prepping for secondary school, you know, trying to teach them to be critical thinkers, and they learnt about Drake. And that was the year when he had a child with a porn star. And I always say when I mention that in the presentation, I don't really care who he sleeps with. It's none of my business. If he wants 7 children with 7 porn stars, that's his business. But that was quite a big thing that came out that year about Drake. And that was the year that our year 6 children learned about him. So his equivalent would be Justin Bieber. So how would you feel if your kids from the UK living in Jamaica came home and said, Mum, for White History Month, we're learning about Justin Bieber and Billy Ray Cyrus? Because obviously Billy Ray Cyrus is famous for Achy Breaky Heart. And obviously recently he's become popular again with Old Town Road. And yeah, Justin Bieber, he's Justin Bieber. And so so our kids learned about Stevie Wonder, which, you know, he's achieved amazing things, don't get me wrong. And it's not funny, but I find it funny that I did this workshop at a education conference, and one of the teachers in the room had taught the kids about Stevie Wonder years ago, and he got really angry that I kind of said, well, it's equivalent to Billy Ray Cyrus. He wouldn't stop going on about, well, he's, you know, Stevie Wonder's achieved a lot, and you know, he's a blind man who can, you know, play musical instruments and write music. And I'm like, yeah, he's achieved a hell of a lot, but it's equivalent to Billy Ray Cyrus. And he kind of killed the mood in the workshop, but I guess seeing these people kind of kill the mood for me as a parent when I went into school and saw a display on the wall telling us what our children would be learning in each year group. And I won't lie, I was heartbroken. And I didn't cry, but I was heartbroken, and I couldn't speak. I couldn't look the headmistress in her eyes. I couldn't believe, after 2 years of trying my hardest with them, you know, giving them lesson plans, giving them suggestions, giving them the links, offering my time, Margaret offering her time, they were learning about Justin Bieber and Billy Ray Cyrus. Sorry, go on, Joe.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, Roger. There are a few comments now, if you'd like me to refer to them whenever there's...
Please.
Yes, so Claire T says, this school sounds awful. Hannah says, I'd be horrified. Emily says, American and Canadian, ? And Claire also says, total lack of respect for your great ideas. I don't understand why these teachers would choose these people as role models. And I think you might pronounce it, Gianella asks, does this show a lack of awareness of historical figures, easier to reference current people than people from history? David Olusoga's new children's version of his book is a really good starting point to address this alongside your links. Hannah says, relying on figures in music and sport is the other common choice, rather than looking further into other fields where Black figures are often a lot less visible, but have achieved great things, e.g. science and literature. Most teachers would be grateful for a lesson plan handed to them. And Mel also saying, because they, have a preference for normality, in inverted commas. And Nancy Mendoza saying, I think it's even worse than a lack of knowledge of historical figures. It's an assumption that all Black people have achieved has been in music and sport. And that's all the ones that have come in just then.
Well, I'll show you what some of the other year groups learnt about as well. So we learnt about Kyle Walker. Now, Kyle Walker's from Sheffield, and obviously we're based in Sheffield. So Kyle Walker's from Sheffield, and it was the year that they went to, did they come fourth in the World Cup? So they learnt about Kyle Walker, which is equivalent to Harry Kane in White History Month. And again, it's wonderful that Kyle Walker's achieved what he's achieved. I'm not taking away from any of these people, but if you're learning about one person a year for a week, your children are learning about one influential white person in a predominantly Black country, and you find out your children's learning about Harry Kane or Jensen Button, how would you feel? What do they think the white children are capable of achieving? It's the age-old sports and music trope, entertainment. We're there to entertain you, and it's why I couldn't look at the teachers, I couldn't look at the head, I couldn't go to the school. I was absolutely heartbroken, and I didn't do it for accolades and awards and recognition. I do it because I want my children to know that there is more to us than slavery, that we have been here for centuries. We have contributed for absolute centuries. And every year you're rolling out Rosa Parks, Mary Seacole, Nelson Mandela, and now, and it's not just happening in my school, parents are now saying, actually, we're sick of learning about those people, because if you've got more than one child in the school, they regurgitate the same person. It's like they're on rotation. And so parents, not just from my children's school, I've heard it from other parents, they're like, we want our kids to learn more than these three individuals for their whole school life. And so all of a sudden, what appears to be happening is teachers are having to use their own common sense and their own knowledge. And it's showing that the teachers know very little. And I think there's an assumption that us as Black parents have all the answers, and we don't, because we have also been taught in the same school system. So we have been taught very little about Black history. So we're learning as we go, and we kind of need the support of the school, because our kids are sponges in school. They learn in school. And then for that 1 week a year, you're teaching our children about tropes, entertainers. So is there any more comments, Joe?
Yes, there are a couple. So Udit has said Black individuals and individuals identifying as people of colour have to be extraordinary as a default, only to be identified and recognised. White individuals have the privilege of being ordinary and getting away with it. Rachel says it's very lazy of the teachers just to go for people who are in the media now, rather than talking about individuals that have changed the course of history. And Judith Wright has just said the programme that was recently broadcast on TV, where Judy Love learned about Septimus Severus, the African emperor, John Blank, musician during the Tudor times, and other Black figures from Black history, would be a great start for educators to learn and teach students. Mel says, very true, I now try to build my own things instead of trying to change a traditional system. And Leona says, I found there is a confusion between Black History Month and learning about racism.
This quote is really, it speaks to me because of what happened in my daughter's class. So sometimes a simple, almost insignificant gesture on the part of a teacher can have a profound formative effect on the life of a student. And that's Paolo. I cannot pronounce his surname. Can you pronounce it, Joe?
I mean, I could try.
See, I thought you might be all-knowing.
No, I'm definitely not all-knowing. Oh dear. I mean, Freire. I mean, yeah, that's my best go. Sorry.
Paolo. We'll call him Paolo. But I found that quote really very moving. That very small gestures can make a big difference in a child's life. Because what happened? The only class that did anything remotely to do with anything I suggested was my daughter's class. And what I'd done, I took in 3 passports and a pension book that belonged to my family. So that's my great-granddad, and on the top right-hand side, that's my nanan. And then on the left-hand side at the top, that's my mum. And then down at the bottom, that's my great-great-grandma. And that's her sugar pensioner book. And so I took them into school because my daughter kind of wanted to show her teacher. And when we went into their class, He'd not done what I've asked. He'd not done what I'd suggested about the NHS. He'd not done that, even though I took in all the paperwork as well. He'd not done that, but he decided to do Windrush, and they had display boards, and they had information on all the countries that Windrush visited, and I think he misunderstood why I took the passports in. So on one of the boards, it said that somebody in class's family had come to the UK on Empire Windrush, and that didn't happen. But the teachers thought it had happened because they misunderstood why we took the passports in. So for the entire day, there's this display of my family's passports. And all these teachers and kids kept coming up to my daughter and saying, oh, wow, it's amazing. I've seen your family's passports. And a few of the governors came and shook my daughter's hand and said, oh, it's wonderful and such and such. And I could see the pride growing in my daughter over people acknowledging the journey that her family had made. And so even though there was a miscommunication and they thought that they'd come on Empire Windrush, and my daughter didn't correct them, and she knows they didn't come on Empire Windrush. But for a day, I saw how proud my daughter felt. And I saw how something quite insignificant that the teacher had done, they thought it was insignificant. They just displayed my daughter's ancestors' passports, but it made my daughter feel incredibly proud. And I think it's really, really important to ensure that when you're talking about history, that you understand that the people in the room are impacted by that history. So when you talk about just slavery in schools, that's all our children see themselves as, being descendants of slaves. When you're just talking about Black history, but from an American context, so you're showing inspiring things that people have done, you're showing them Barack Obama, you're showing them Rosa Parks, Maya Angelou, they're just seeing that inspirational Black people are American. And that's also what the white children are seeing. The white children are never in a position where they are realizing that, you know, their friends can achieve something other than being good at sport and singing and dancing, because you're not showing them anything other than that. So that's why I would always argue that when you teach Black history properly, when you weave Black culture and Black history throughout the curriculum, it enriches everybody's understanding of history, full stop. Not just Black history, but like actual history. So we've been stuck in this bloody pandemic for God knows how long. And what I do every year for Remembrance Sunday, I always put up things on social media about Black soldiers. And the reason I do that is because there's never any acknowledgement. And I always have trolls and people who want to argue with me that I'm being divisive because I'm writing about Black contributions to the war. And I always argue with them that they're in a privileged position because they, every year, and you won't even realize it because you're in a position of privilege, but the white people around me often put up pictures of their grandfather or their great uncle who fought in the war. And they're very proud of the contribution that family member has made. And then within schools, they talk about Remembrance Sunday and they show you pictures, but again, it's white soldiers. So even when we are the heroes, so, you know, England was part of the forces that won the war, you don't show any Black contributions within that. So again, we don't look like we've played any part in making Britain Great Britain. So I always put things up to remind people that we were part of it. There was West Indian regiments who fought in both wars, you know, and it wasn't just people from Black countries, it was people from all the Commonwealth countries. So we were stuck in the pandemic this year, and we had VE Day. So I made some bunting. This is the bunting I made. Used all the ink out of my printer. I was actually really angry at the end of it because it cost more than I thought. But I made some bunting because everybody was putting up bunting of the Union Jack and everybody was being really patriotic, but nobody was remembering the contributions of the Black soldiers. And so what I did on my window, and the picture isn't very good, but you can see my rainbow at the top because we like to be different as a family. So we didn't do your typical rainbow. We had an alternative rainbow. And you can see my bunting for VE Day. And it was just pictures of Black people from Black regiments to kind of remember what they did. And it's little things like that where you'll have a neighbour say, oh, I didn't even realise there was people from the West Indies who came and fought. And you have those little conversations and it helps you, it helps the majority communities realise that, you know, we were here before Windrush. We've been contributing all along, you know, we've not come here to just drain society. You know, you've created a hostile environment for us, and you're acting like we're scrounging, but no, we've been here and we've been contributing. I think as well, what was really important for me anyway, was last year I made a conscious decision that I wasn't going to contribute at all to Black History Month at the school. So 2019, I said to Margaret, I'm not doing anything. And that year they went back to doing American individuals. And I found out my daughter's class was learning about Harriet Tubman. I just spoke to her teacher and said, you know, because I'm an autistic parent, so there's neurodisabilities within the family. And I said, you know, my daughter will be really fascinated to know that Harriet Tubman had epilepsy. And the teacher's taking little notes because she says, oh, I don't know anything about Harriet Tubman. I'm going to have to read up on her. So I was like, okay. So I was like, it will really fascinate her to know that she had a disability. And so when my daughter came home from school and she's like, Mum, we're learning about Harriet Tubman. And she's like, guess what? She had epilepsy when she was a little girl. And so the first thing I told her teacher, the first thing I said my daughter would be fascinated about was the first thing my daughter came in and told me about. And I could have been a great ally in that school. And I always considered myself to be an ally to the teachers, to the school environment as a whole. And they never utilized what they had. And I sound like I'm like coming out of a really bad relationship and saying, you know, you've lost me. I don't mean it like that. I just mean that I feel that they looked a gift horse in the mouth, and I'll never understand why that happened. I don't know if it was important for them to have ownership over what they were doing, or if they felt I was telling them that they're doing it wrong. I don't understand what it was, but I feel it was really important for me to create a workshop out of it. And I thought one of the things that was important was to be quite honest. And in every workshop I've had prior to this have been face-to-face workshops, and people always come in really enthusiastically because they're like, oh, right, we want to kind of learn what you've taught these schools. Come in with a pad and a pencil to kind of take notes and stuff. And by the end, I've honest to God had people say, is this a joke? Did this really happen? And I'm like, yes, it happened. It really did happen. And yeah, so my children are no longer at that school because they're now key stage 3 and key stage 4. And I've also made a conscious decision not to ask anybody who still goes to the school what they've learned this month for Black History Month. I'm a massive Game of Thrones fan. And whenever I go into a room to do this presentation, I hear Ramsay Bolton in my head talking to Theon Greyjoy. And there's a bit when he says to Theon, you know, if you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention. And I think as parents, we need to be paying more attention to what our children are being taught, because it has a knock-on effect on what we believe we can achieve and who we are as individuals and as the community as a whole.